Hello everyone, my name's Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter. I'm going to show you something about the wide receiver database and all the databases available on FF Statistics. It's one of my most favorite features of FF Statistics, and so I want to show you why and maybe how to use it. I think some people get maybe a little more intimidated about the databases rather than the tools available in the season data and the data analysis, which basically process the databases for you. But by downloading the databases straight to your own computer or tablet or anything else you're using, you can actually do a lot of easy investigation into historical examples of different types of players to try and understand um, what we might be able to hope for in 2018. So what I'm going to look at today is rookie wide receivers and how they compare to other types of wide receivers uh, to try and give us some idea of what we're hoping for rookie wide receivers moving into next year. So the way you find the databases is very simple. You just go to the database tab. It's actually got its own tab. You actually start on the custom offensive scoring system, which is a really useful tool. Maybe we'll talk about it another time. But then you just select one of the positions: quarterback, running back, tight end, or even IDP, and download it straight to whatever device you're using. It downloads as a CSV file, which, if you don't know what that means, it doesn't really matter. It just means you can open it up pretty much in whatever program you want, or even upload it to Google Sheets if you don't have a program. That's a good way of getting access and using these databases without having to invest in a new program or a new app even. So download it straight to your hard drive and it pops up and it looks something like this. In fact, it looks exactly like this because this is it. There are actually 78 different columns, so those are all the different variables you can examine. Historical data on wide receivers, in this case, since 2000. It has over 3,000 lines or 3,000 different seasons since 2000, so it's a pretty comprehensive list of everyone that's played in the NFL since 2000. Now, again, to make it more interesting for this time of year, what I'm going to do is look at rookie wide receivers. If you've ever looked at this before, you might have overlooked the season tab, but it's actually one of the more interesting variables to start limiting the overall sample size for, because you can look, because what season basically means is the number season that the player is playing in that particular year. So this number 5 here, that means DeAndre Hopkins was playing in his 5th season in 2017. So if we're more interested in rookie wide receivers or second year wide receivers, we can just limit the entire spreadsheet to number 1. So here's every rookie season since 2000 in the database, and there are actually 572 different examples of rookie seasons. And so even that's a fairly great sample size to start looking for trends, patterns, or things we might be able to hope for. So just as a demonstration, what I'm going to look at is rookie wide receivers that hit into the top 24 of PPR scoring. First question, of course, is how often does that happen? And out of 572 different examples, there are only 18 of those rookies actually hit into the top 24, which we already know. We know that rookies do not often hit into the top 24. Simple calculation, 18 divided by 572 tells us it's happened 3% of the time. So 3% of rookie seasons have actually finished with a top 24 PPR finish. That's already something fun to know. So what I also did in this sheet I prepared earlier, like some kind of bad presenter, is work out the average across all our variables of rookie wide receivers that hit. So we can see the average number of targets, their receptions, some of their efficiency metrics like yards per reception. We can also look at more of their opportunity, since opportunity is where fantasy points come from, in terms of market share data. That's what this little MS means. If you've noticed it and never quite been able to figure out what it means, MS means market share, which simply means the percentage of the team's overall whatever the variable happens to be. So in terms of MS targets, this is the percentage of targets that the player got from that team. So Tyreek Hill, for example, in 2016 got 15% of Kansas City's targets in that year, and so on and so forth. So down here, if I look at the average formula that I worked out, we'll see that a rookie wide receiver that hits into the top 24 in their first season tends to average about 21% of the team's market share. And we can also see all the different examples, since there are only 18 here, so we can see that Tyreek Hill's 15% is dragging down the average quite substantially, whereas Andre Johnson and Anquan Boldin's 27 and 30% market share are actually dragging it up. So, what else can we do? Well, depending on how comfortable you are with formulas in Excel, the average one's fairly simple. You just type the word average, but you can also use average if or average if s. If you're not familiar with that, all it means is the average of whatever variables, whatever numbers you select, if more than one variable. That's what the s means. So, in this particular example, what I did is I worked out the league average. So, this selection here, if we looked along, is actually the number of games, because I did it for every variable. So I selected all the columns, and then I said, what is the average if first condition, being BO, is if they finished in the top 24, and the second condition was if the season happened since 2007. And the reason I did that is I just wanted more recent examples. So this is the average of wide receivers in the top 24 in the last 10 years. Is where you say that in a sentence, and then I dragged it across. So top 24 wide receivers compared to rookie top 24 wide receivers, all 18 of them. One thing I can notice very easily, looking even at the first few examples, is that rookie wide receivers tend to get less than the average top 24 wide receiver. They tend to get less in opportunity, 117 targets compared to 135. And they also tend to get less in terms of overall production. They average about 1,000 yards, whereas the average top 24 receiver averages closer to 1,200 yards. And so we can look along at all the different variables and see how that compares. It's actually pretty striking that it's true on every variable. Rookie wide receivers that hit tend to get less opportunity and produce significantly less. So, first thing we can say is, even if we think we know of a rookie wide receiver that could enter this very, very small sample size, it's a very rare event of a rookie entering the top 24, they're probably still not going to be as good as other top 24 wide receivers we think we can identify. To go a little further, I also looked at what players do in their first, second, and third year on average, not just those that hit into the top 24. So this is all rookies, all second years, and all third years. And again, that's just simply using average if and the simple condition of 1, 2, 3. Alright. So we can also see that opportunity and also production increases over their first 3 years, which again is something we know. Rookie wide receivers get better the more years they play, but it is interesting to see the exact numbers on how that averages out, and that the average third year player gets about 417 yards. So that's what we can expect from players entering their third year in 2018. Alright, so something else that might be interesting just looking at wide receivers is what round were they drafted in. We all know, because it's very well said and very often said, that first round wide receivers, for example, these 10 examples, are more likely to hit in the NFL. And that's very true, right? We've got 18 different examples of rookie wide receivers that hit, and 10 of them were drafted in the first round. Also notice that 3 of them came from 2014. Just exaggerating how rare it is for a wide receiver to actually do this in their first year. But something I also like to point out is that of those 18, 8, so only slightly less than 50%, were not drafted in the first round. If we expand that to the first 3 rounds, we actually get 16 players were drafted in the first 3 rounds. So that expands our potential player pool for the first year and the second year and the third year, if we'd like to expand that and you should, to the top 3 rounds. So that drags it beyond DJ Moore and Calvin Ridley and starts including players like Christian Kirk, Dante Pettis, and also Traquan Smith, who's one of the more forgotten that's been drafted in the top 3 rounds. So the player pool by draft round gets a lot bigger based on examples of rookie wide receivers that hit. Because remember, of 572 examples, only 18 hit in their first year. How many hit in their second year since 2000? Well, a few more. About 46 examples. But that's still only 46 out of 572, so we know it's still a small hit rate because we already expect rookie wide receivers mostly not to hit at the NFL level. But the second year gets a lot more common just on this basic way of looking at it. How about in the third year? Third year players that hit total 52. So every year, rookie wide receivers are increasingly more likely to hit at the NFL level. And so on and so forth. Now, one condition I haven't put in here and is also worth investigating with the database is when they hit first. Rookie wide receivers that are in the top 24 in their first year tend to have been in the top 24 before that. And so we can create a separate column and create a condition for whether a wide receiver has ever been in the top 24 simply by using some if, but maybe that's for another video. And that's a way of going further with investigating rookies. And remember, we did all this just by using 1 and 2 columns and a very simple formula with average and average if-s. And we never had to leave the database. We didn't have to go to 7 different websites. We didn't have to use someone else's tool. We're literally just looking at the actual historical data because that's what the database at FS Statistic gives you. It gives you all the data that everyone is drawing from all in one place so you can look at it. I mean, you can even look at coaching tendencies if you think they're real, which I don't. So I normally just get rid of these, but still, to see if there's any coach that typically is associated with rookies that hit in the first, second, and third year, for example. Again, I don't buy into that, but still, you can find out if I am right or wrong, and you never have to leave the database tab. You can use it however you want, and investigate whatever you want as well. And so that's why I find it one of the more useful tools, because it has so much in one place, and it's so easy to move things around how you want them to find examples of what you're interested in. Alright, so I better stop it there because that's probably enough of one Englishman talking about a spreadsheet for anyone to bear. I hope some of it was useful. If you have any questions, let me know. You can hit me up on Twitter at PAHowdy, or read some of my articles here on FS Statistics or on DLF.com. Thanks very much.